in development work, when you're developing something, some technology, and you have a client or a person that's like, hey, can you I just want to button that.
Yeah.
Or I just want it to do this thing. And then, Sherry, I think part of what we're saying is you have to say, okay, let me explain to you what that would mean. Because we can do the button easily, but then who can see it and who can change it and what happens when you push it and where does the data go and how do we do it? Like all of that stuff, which if you're a professional, you do internally.
Yes.
That's what you're talking about when you're talking about this piece of unseen work. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Cap and Gown. I'm Rachel Phillips-Buck, VP for Student Success. I will eventually be joined by Dr. Sherry Woosley today to have a great conversation about unseen work. But for now, Matt and I are driving back from the SACS-COC conference in Nashville. So we had to stop so that we could do our podcast today. We had a great time spending time with our clients and meeting new people. And so that was really fun. And I know from having spent the last couple of days with all of our practitioners and schools that this is a really hard week for many of you. It is the week before finals, which means you have a lot of work that you're doing to make sure your students are registered, that they're ready for their finals, that they have their plans for next semester all set up. So this will be just a nice break for you to think about some of the work that you've been doing. And Sherry and I are going to have a great conversation about how you can make that really transparent so that people understand everything that's involved with all of the different steps that you have. I know that we are all looking forward to some time off, and I'm going to invite Dr. Sherry Woosley, who's the Director of Analytics and Research for Benchworks Elantra, on. Hi.
Hi.
I hope everybody can tell that I really like you because I haven't seen you in a long time, and then I see your face and I just feel very happy. So thanks for agreeing to come on again with me.
Love this. In December, what a perfect way to end the semester.
I know. I was going to say this topic that we're going to introduce right now, you're exactly right. It is so relevant. I talk all the time about the rhythm of the academic year. And what I love about it is that it's so predictable and that we just know when we meet other professionals, we know like this is what's going on with you and this is what you're thinking, right? And this is what your week is looking like.
Yeah.
And you were saying this is a time in the year where so many people are thinking about how the semester went.
Yeah.
Like, where are the places where they're like, I didn't like that very much, right? Mm-hmm. And also a vision to the future next semester. How are we going to do things differently? So I think this content is going to be really helpful.
Good.
This is your suggestion to me. And when you started talking about it, I was like, oh my goodness, this is true. This is everywhere. And you're saying like, yeah. Anytime you say it, someone's like, oh yeah, I know about that.
Well, okay, so let's introduce the topic of unseen work. I think I pulled that language because I played with all kinds of different ones. You see people talk about hidden work, unseen work, invisible work, whatever. And I like the idea of calling it unseen work and focusing it on the work. Because some of the other studies or books or other things start talking about lives and yes, you can see this in your life. Yes, you can see it in all sorts of ways, but I think there's a loveliness to grounding it in the work context.
Yeah, I totally.
And yes, as soon as I started thinking about this, I saw a keynote by a VP who said we need to honor the invisible work. And I was like, that's it. And I heard it from a friend of mine who's actually, he knows sort of student affairs history. And he was telling me about how he thinks that in some respects, student affairs really kind of became super valuable in the 60s, 70s, and 80s because there were crises on campus. And everybody said, somebody needs to deal with these. And so they started creating really lovely student affairs pieces. And then they started building more student affairs and student development. And he's a little worried that we don't necessarily see the value of some of those roles right now because they're so good at what they do that they head off crises.
Right.
And so we don't know their value because they head them off. And I was like,
don't see it. Yeah.
That's unseen work. And so, yeah, it just over and over and over again, I saw it. And then I watched your guys' podcast where you were talking about orbiting the giant hairball. One of my favorite books, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yes, it is. So I couldn't believe it that you guys were talking about it.
Yeah.
And I was watching a recording and I was shouting at you. No.
You're like, preach it. That's right.
But but I think you guys were talking about the cow example, about the cows in the fields munching.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I made this up or it's in the book. That tells you how long ago I read the book. But I have this vision of the efficiency experts on the edge yelling, make the milk faster.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Unseen work.
Yeah, that idea of, I think the technical definition is physical, cognitive, and emotional effort required to complete one's job that is not visible to others.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you pitched this idea to me, literally the next day, I saw this on, I think it was on Instagram, maybe. Yeah. It's a picture of a mom packing lunches. Okay.
Yeah.
And it says visible labor.
Yeah.
Make sandwiches.
Yeah.
Add snacks. Yeah. Put in lunchbox. Okay. And then the next piece says invisible labor. Remember who hates crust. Check if it's a nut-free day. Ensure we have a protein, veggie, and a carb. Remember that Asia's friend gets jealous when you pack Lunchables for her. Write a note for the shy kid that's having a hard week in class. Check that the water bottles are clean. Mental math on grocery needs and set a reminder to stock the lunch account. And I was like, that is exactly what Sherry is talking about.
Yeah.
Which is, can you just pack the lunches? And you're like, yeah, I can just.
Well, and you and I have talked about this in the student success realm. Like the when a leader or a colleague goes, can you just?
Yeah, it's my least favorite.
Yeah,
it really is my least favorite.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk about this idea. Another example that came out for me is, we always talk about, in fact, you and I were just saying this, like in development work, when you're developing something, some technology, and you have a client or a person that's like, hey, can you I just want to button that.
Yeah.
Or I just want it to do this thing. Yeah. And then, Sherry, I think part of what we're saying is you have to say, okay, let me explain to you what that would mean. Yeah. Because we can do the button easily, but then who can see it and who can change it and what happens when you push it and where does the data go and how do we do it? Like all of that stuff, which if you're a professional, you do internally.
Yes.
That's what you're talking about when you're talking about this piece of unseen work.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. So the way that I've been thinking about this, and I think I sent this to you, but we can talk through some of it, is I've been thinking about what are the conditions, the factors, the things that create unseen work. And so like one of the things I'm thinking about as you talk about the button, right, is there's all this stuff behind the scenes. Yeah. And so the way that I've started talking about it is the hidden effort, the behind the scenes things. And I was thinking about all the ways that hidden effort, like, I don't know, arises. Mm-hmm. So it can be things like maybe the person's hidden. You ever had a colleague who's in another building and you just don't see all the stuff they do, right? Like, sure, or maybe you've been the colleague who even like, or I think about like when I go on the road to a conference, I'm not visible to the people back in the office. Right. So suddenly what I'm doing and the fact that I am on 10 hours a day, they don't see it.
Yeah.
It's really dumb. So I think there's that. I think there's the work behind the scenes, meaning it is, sometimes there's things that are behind the curtain, if you will. I saw an example of a VP talking about how he had two different groups on campus that were arguing two different points of view. And he was running back and forth talking to the two different ones. And he said it had to remain hidden. I can't go out and say, well, I talked to both of them. That's going to exacerbate everything. Sometimes some of our work is behind the curtain.
For sure. So sure, I want to stop you there because I was thinking that piece, we always talk about the meeting before the meeting and the meeting after the meeting. And I was thinking about how much work often we're doing to build consensus before we have the formal meeting, right?
Yes.
I've talked to everybody who's going to be in that meeting and I've said, what are you concerned about? And here's what I'm going to, and do you have any objections to this? And what do we need to make sure? I've talked to everybody about that.
Yeah.
And then we get into the meeting and we have the meeting and it goes kind of the way I think, right?
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I'm going back to everybody and saying, how was that?
Everybody.
And nobody would see that. What they see is a very smooth, well-run meeting. And they have no idea how hard we had to live for that, right?
So I think that's a fabulous example. I think there's a couple other things that are hidden effort, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
One is the one that we sort of talked about, the stuff that's in your head. I have to think through 20 things. Nobody knows I'm doing that. Right. Or they may sit there and go, what? I think the creativity where it's in your head and you have to think through all of the stuff.
Yeah.
That's labor. That is hard work, right? I also think there is a category of things where the efforts don't look like work. Yeah. Maybe I'm having coffee with somebody, but I do that regularly to keep that relationship, to get information, to make sure that those communication lines are open. It just looks like I'm having coffee.
Right. That's
right.
I just was meeting with a woman. She said we were talking about working kind of across the aisle between academic affairs and development. And she said, every Thursday morning, I have an 8:15 meeting where everybody comes and just spends time with me and we don't solve any problems, but I'm like, tell me about your week and what are you thinking about and all of that kind of stuff. And she said, my boss said, does that solve anything? Does that, like, are you fixing anything? Yeah. And she was like, no, that's not what we're doing in that meeting. What I'm doing in that meeting is building social capital, building trust, making sure that I understand their perspective so that when something comes up, I have all of these things in place so that we can solve it quicker. So someone might be like, wow, you're really good at solving those things. And she's like, every morning at 8:15, I do an hour of investment so that when the thing comes up, I'm in a good place, right?
Yeah. So things that don't look like work. Yeah. I remember I'm remote now, but when we had an office, I would periodically wander around and I must have looked like people were like, what's she doing wandering around? I'm wandering around to see who's looking stressed, frustrated, who's lost, who's even, I'm looking at who's yapping, who's not doing stuff that maybe I need to kind of poke my head in, like that part of management sometimes is those things that don't look like work.
And I would say, it's just such a good thing to articulate for our people who work in higher education because, we've talked before about collision moments, which is why you park across campus and walk in. Yeah. And it's like, if you don't understand what I'm doing, it's like Rachel's walking around all the time. Like, I don't know why is she hanging out in the library? Because I am doing the work of paying attention to who of our students is isolated, who of our students seems to be really integrated into a community, who's eating lunch by themselves. I'm walking around for the same reason that you are, which is to be like, let me take the temperature of who needs my attention and where we need to focus some of that work. And that looks like I'm just taking a walk, but I'm not, right?
Yes. So I think that whole notion of hidden effort is huge. I think there's a couple other categories of unseen work.
Okay.
One of them is, and we've talked about it before, it's when the expert makes it look easy.
Yeah.
Then you don't know all the stuff that they're thinking, all the stuff that they're doing. Orbiting the Giant Hairball has a great example. Pool players. Expert pool players. If you go watch them play, it looks really dumb and easy and simple. And you're like, this is it. Where's the trick shot? Where's the crazy stuff, right? And as I was thinking about this notion of expert, oh my goodness, every category that I can think of, public speakers.
Yeah.
Really amazing ones. You don't see the work that went into it, or the skill building. Yeah. My daughter plays bass guitar. And she was telling me last night that she's having trouble with this one song because her pinky. But she said she's got smaller hands than most bass players. And so she has to figure out how does she work around the this and the that, and how does she build the muscles and all that. Like, you just don't know.
You don't have any idea how that one little thing. And actually, Sherry, I think it's one of the reasons why people like to be around other professionals.
Yes.
Because there are places where, in fact, you remember I used to do our podcast with Anthony Malcurie.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
one time he said to me, Rachel, I see what you do. I see what you're doing. I see all of these little things that you have worked on and all of this research you've done and all. I see that because I do that also. And I was like, thank you. Nobody has ever said that to me. Why? Because it looks very simple if you do it well, right?
Yes.
But having
There's an elegance. If you're an expert, there's an elegance. Even think like faculty members who are amazing.
Yeah.
You don't know. Or the other one I was thinking of is leaders. Really good leaders. You have no idea all the things they're thinking, processing, all the stuff they've learned, all the stuff they continue to learn and self-reflect on. There is a reason so many people go, oh, I could do that.
Right.
Because they haven't really thought about all the unseen work. And let's be honest, we've all done that. Like, not to like badmouth people, we've all done that.
Yeah, for sure.
And yet, if somebody were to come along and say, are you sure? Do you really want to be responsible for all the outcomes? Do you really want to do this? Do you want to have to do this? Do you want to have to? Then you start going, oh, no.
Why don't you shadow me for a day? You think that is. Yeah. I was thinking, I think probably in between those two things about expertise and this idea of kind of leadership is how hard it is to explain something well. Mm-hmm. And I think you and I are similar about this in that I will understand a thing and I will spend a very long time being like, okay, how am I going to translate this into something that's understandable, that is sticky, that I don't have 4 hours to help somebody understand this. How do I explain something really well? And then we go to a meeting and I do it. And it's like, oh yeah, that's really simple. Yeah, thanks. That was a simple concept. And you're like, days. That took me days.
Yes.
I was thinking about that.
The way that you explain success debt.
Right.
Is a perfect example of that, where somebody really has thought through it. Okay, so one condition that creates unseen work that I want to tell you, is to me around outcomes. It's when the outcome is prevention or absence, like I gave you the example of student development and student affairs. But I also think in some respects, sometimes student success is that way. When the outcome is that you're creating an environment and supporting a student so they stay.
Yeah.
You don't, unless you have some numbers or something, there's not anything. I also think in situations, and student success falls right into this, when there are not clear links between our efforts and the outcome. When the outcome is really complicated and has lots of factors, how do you say that our efforts did that?
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, so Sherry, let's work backwards because I do want to apply this to this idea of student success. So one of the things I was thinking about in terms of this outcome piece.
Yeah.
I was working with a school a couple of years ago and they had lower retention than they had before.
Okay.
And in the meeting, the discussion was, why is this our retention? I don't understand, like what? And the director of retention was like, okay, this year, we have had 2 hurricanes. Yeah. We had a res hall that is out of, they're working on it. So we had to put everybody in our older res hall. We also had a res hall where all of the laundry rooms broke. So we asked all of our freshmen to cart their laundry in baskets across campus to a trailer in the middle of campus to do their laundry and then cart it back, which is horrifying, right?
Yeah, I would hate that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. So, and like 3 other things. And she was like, one of the hardships is we have this retention outcome. Mm-hmm. And I understand you're asking me why, but I'm saying we have no way to show with all of these other things going on. If we didn't work as hard as we did, how much worse our retention would be. Exactly. There's all of these other factors, right? And it's like, what work did you do? Well, I kept another 35 students from leaving. Yeah. And you would have no way of knowing that because those things aren't linked. What you're saying is your work and the retention outcome. And I'm like, hey, there's a lot of other stuff in there that I was fighting against the tide. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's just that idea of how do we actually make these linkages between the work we're doing and the outcome we're seeing, and
Yeah.
acknowledge those mitigating factors as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think, I mean, I'm a data person, but the world is complex and people in particular are really complex. So
Yeah.
you can do a whole lot of things. That doesn't mean you're going to be able to absolutely prove it, which is why some of this work is unseen, is invisible, or the impact of it is invisible,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
I think we've come a long way, because the other category is when the outcomes aren't even measured. And there were a lot of things that are not measured. We don't often do a good job of measuring culture. Or like, I think of myself as a manager or a supervisor. There's a lot of outcomes of things I do that we do not measure.
Yeah, that's right.
We just don't.
Yeah.
But they're really important to the success and the performance of my team. Yeah.
Well, and I don't know. Okay, so I think we can move to kind of the solution of this, because I think there are some things that we can do there.
Absolutely.
But I do want to talk about this idea of something else that you have said, which is, as you're talking about like a pool player, which is the underestimating the value of experience.
Yeah.
Which, when I think about things like cooking, and if someone if someone had never cooked before and I'm like, we're going to make something really simple, so we're just going to do this, right? And then I'm like, wait a second, I'm starting up here, and we literally are talking about, how do you know the size of the flame on the gas stove to cook? What does low medium mean, right? And when do we do the salt, and when do we, and there's an underestimation, I think both for people who are doing the unseen work, as well as those who don't. Like, and you're thinking about a lot of things that you don't realize you're holding in cognitive load in your head.
Yeah.
Matt and I were just listening to this podcast about I think it was called Swim Towards the Shark. Do you know This American Life?
Yes,
sure.
Love that one. Yeah.
This was one, Swim Towards the Shark, and they were talking about these people were out in the ocean, and this guy was getting attacked by a shark, and his two friends took off after him to go and save him. Okay. And Ira Glass was like, well, why did you do that? Like, weren't you afraid you were going to get bitten? And the one guy was a trained, like a lifeguard swimmer, like very well trained. Yeah. And he was like, well, first of all, it's a red tide, which means the shark probably couldn't see, which means he didn't mean to bite the guy, which means then when he did, he probably went away. And he just went through all of this calculus about, should I go back to the shore? Should I save him? No, there's nobody in the lifeguard boat. And when he laid it all out, I thought, that is such a good example of him being like, well, sometimes you just know what you should do. And then when you dig into that a little bit more, there's all this unseen calculus that goes on in his brain to say, this is the right decision. Yeah. And that's hard to unpack and teach, because oftentimes you don't even know what are all the things you thought of.
No. Right? Well, and I think that is where sometimes organizations get into trouble with assuming that, we could just replace somebody with a new person. And you're like, do we understand all of all of the relationships, all of the thinking, all of the experience? They know not to go over to that office. That office can't help. They know a ton of things. Yeah. And we talk about institutional knowledge, but I think sometimes we underestimate.
Well, Sherry, I wonder if it's actually a good way to uncover some of that hidden work by saying, there are things that you would write down. We want you to document what you do. There are things that you would write down, and that's the work we know you do, right? And then I run this, and then I do this, and then I check this, and then I look at it, whatever. But one of the ways to really uncover that unseen work is to then go through and be like, can we fill in the gaps between all of these things that you've never articulated? That thought process, that social capital, the decisions that you're making and how you're weighing things and all this stuff. We just don't make it transparent.
No. Well, and one of the things I think that we need to be a little bit careful of as we talk about unseen work is there is this notion of make everything transparent.
Right.
And we got to be a little careful of that, because I mean, if I had time to know everything that my people do, I wouldn't have a job because I wouldn't have time for any of it.
Right.
So I think there's this thing of bucketing or categorizing things so
Yeah.
that we understand what kinds of things fall into what buckets. Where do we really need expert knowledge? Where don't we need it?
Mhm.
Where is there a big difference between the effort and the outcome, so that we understand where we're investing unseen work?
Yeah.
But I have, and I'm sure you've had experiences like this, where you've gone into an organization and the person above you doesn't know your stuff, and they're like, well, we'll just make checklists and I'm like, oh my goodness, you're going to have
Yeah.
me spend more time on the checklist than actually doing the work, and that's not good for the organization
Yeah.
either.
For sure.
I was even laughing because the woman who I like her work, Leanne Davey, I've read some of her work about unseen work, and she says unseen work can lead to resentment, and resentment in my mind on both sides.
Yeah.
Like if I'm working really hard and you don't see it and value it, I'm going to be annoyed at you.
Yep.
Or if I'm looking at you going, she doesn't look like she's
What do
working
you
that hard
do?
and I'm working really hard, I'm going to get mad at you. So it kind of can go both.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I think it's related to this other caveat that I think we have about unseen work, which is, in slow productivity, he says you have to trust unseen work, because displaying busyness to prove that you're working is also not healthy, right? So there's this weird line of like, we don't want to do performative busy work.
Right.
I'm sending emails, I'm always answering, I'm blah, blah, blah. But are you really doing any like meaningful work? No, because you're so busy performing busy that there's not a lot of substance. And at the same time, I would say a lot of people I know, to your point, are on the other side, which is, you've asked me to do something and you have no idea how complicated that thing is. And I'm not wearing it as a badge of honor. And I'm not saying like, oh my gosh, now I have to blah, blah, blah. I'm just saying, if it's that important, I need you to understand this is what you're asking me to do. Is that what you want me to do? Yes, it is. Okay, great. Then I'll do it, right?
Yep.
But you do have to be very careful about how you balance those two things.
It's such a line, isn't it? Well, and I was even thinking, oftentimes when we think of unseen work, we think of it from a negative light, right? Like if people don't see it and I'm not getting credit. But there are certain parts of our jobs that we kind of do want to be unseen, because we want it. We want to have autonomy for how we do it. We want to have freedom for how we do it.
For sure.
And if you're going to like how many people talk about being micromanaged? Nobody wants that either. So I think you're exactly right to think of this is a tough line.
So Sherry, that's really interesting, because I was thinking about, Matt talks about backstage work, like work that you do that maybe your customers or your students don't see. And so it's interesting, right? Because you have these two pieces. You have like, I don't want my students to feel like I'm working so hard to figure out where you are so I can get you to go to class. Or I have been to the cafeteria 5 times this week to try to find you. I'm happy you finally showed up. Like, we want that to feel to them very, very effortless. And like, I just ran into you and I'm genuinely interested in you. Not that I've done all this busy work for that.
Yeah. You're not a burden. I actually
right. Yeah. But then also there's this other piece of then like your colleagues or your boss who you at least want to understand. Just go find the student and make them go to class is more than what you're saying it is, right? So it's interesting that you might have 2 different audiences there. Absolutely. And you would really want some of those things to remain unseen for some of them. And then for other audiences, you'd be like, but can you just say, it's hard? That would be great. Thanks.
That's good. Well, isn't that in some respects sometimes why having a boss who understands the work is so valuable?
Yeah.
Because they know when they ask you something and they're kind of like, I know this is really hard.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Please squeeze this in. And they're coming from a place of knowledge, and that's helpful. But oftentimes we don't get that benefit.
Yeah. And that's interesting too, because I think that comes from a place of trust.
Yes.
Where, first of all, I would hope that anyone I work with would know if something is a lot.
Yeah.
And
Please.
I seem to not understand that they would say. In fact, one time Rachel Elam said, "Hey, Rachel, I just want you to know when you forward a ticket, you just forward it to support without including the client. Let me show you what I have to do." And then she's like, "I have to go into the ticket and I have to find who sent it. And then I have to add them in. And then I have to send a
And you
reply
went,
and then I have to add you." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm just sorry. What can I do?" And she's like, "If you'll just include them on the reply and say, I forwarded this to support, I don't have to do those 10 steps." And I was like, "Thank you."
easy. Yeah. Totally welcome. Yeah. I love that.
That trust both ways to say, I'm allowed to tell you when it's really hard. And then also, I think as a leader, to be able to say, I know that you actually are willing to do a lot of work, a lot of hard work, even if it's not important to this task. By that, I mean, I've asked you to do something and you know it's going to be 5 days. And I need to say, how much work is that going to take? And if you say 5 days, I'm going to say, you know what, never mind. We'll think of something.
Yeah. Let's figure out a different way.
We're going to do something else, because that is not 5 days worth, right?
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting balance of how you trust each other.
Yes.
I will take care of you and listen to that, but also you have to be able to tell me what those things are.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's good. Okay. So let's see, a couple of other things that we want to make sure we talk about. We talked about, can you just do this thing? I was just talking to somebody who said on their campus, someone was like, "Hey, can you just align our spring 6 week and 12 week and 16 week courses with our summer courses so that we can always have this amount of time between them?" And she was like, "I don't think you understand.
No.
I don't think you understand what you just asked me." And so then she said, "Here are all of the constituents who would be involved in that. We have parents, we have students, we have registrars, we have faculty, we have all of these, when our res halls are open, when the cafeteria is open," and laid it out. And is that what we want to be doing? And the person was like, "Okay, never mind." I thought that would be a good idea.
It sounded really good in my head. I'm sorry I spoke it. Right?
Yeah. If we could just do that, that would be really great. Thinking of another example of the unseen work that takes to build a program.
Yes.
And Sherry, you and I know, I mean, people adopt technology and they adopt surveys and processes on their campus, and they build so much faculty buy-in and procedures and expectations. And then you have a boss who's like, "Hey, we get this other thing. It's free. We're going to do this." And you're like, you have no idea how much unseen work I'm about to have to do, because I'm going to burn this thing that I've just invested in.
Yes.
And have to start all over again. And I think that conversation is oftentimes overlooked.
Well, change management, there's so much of it that doesn't look like work, and it is so fundamental to the success and outcome of a project.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Okay, so let's talk about some things that we can do. Okay. You talk about this idea of, first of all, individually, I have to notice, what am I doing? Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, like, this whole notion of unseen work has been a theme of my work world for a decade. And I just never had the quite language to it. But I think we have to understand, like, we live our jobs. What do other people not know? What do they not see? And what of it is, like, as you said, I'm putting a bunch of work to get something simple, so they definitely don't see it.
Yeah.
So I think there's an evaluation and unpacking. I need to look at what the kinds of, and I always think of categories, not every task. What kinds of categories do I have? What's the labor involved in those categories? And particularly, what are the situations where there's big gaps between labor and outcome? Because I might need to do some explaining in those spaces. And
Yeah.
the other one that Leanne Davy wrote about, which I thought was really good, it probably doesn't apply as much to my work as it does to other people's, was where are the things that require a lot of emotional effort?
Oh, yeah.
Because that's often unseen. Now, I get it in some of the management stuff or some of the like people stuff, but I think we have jobs that have a lot of emotional effort, and we need to be clear for ourselves about those tasks. And what does it take to head into one of those tasks? Does it take to get out of one of those tasks? And how do you kind of recenter yourself, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. We have been talking a lot about the thought process work, which I think our faculty would really appreciate because they're like, I have to have space to think deeply and do my research and those sorts of things. But, for a counselor, 20 hours is full time.
Yes.
That's how many hours of
Yeah.
counseling you can do emotionally
Yes.
before you start to go, this is not sustainable. I can't do this, because you have to have, it's exactly what you're saying, right? Like, I have to get ready for this client. I have to think about what I want to accomplish with them. I have to be really present with them in emotionally heavy hardship. And then I have to decompress from that and then move on to another client who's having another emotional thing. And so I appreciate that. And in that profession, it is very transparent that you cannot sit for 40 hours a week listening to people and still come out healthy.
Yeah.
But I don't think we do that for RAs. I don't think we do that for success coaches or for people in student life who are just like one thing after another, and no one understands that emotional toll that you go home with at the end of the day.
Even a big crisis. Maybe it's not part of your daily stuff, but a big crisis can throw you, and it can throw you for a while. So
for sure.
I think kind of processing that.
Sherry, I'd be really curious. I don't have an answer to this. It would be really interesting to think about, maybe it's individual. What are the markers for you that this was a taxing thing you just did, even though it maybe doesn't look like you did very much? Like, where are the places where you're like when I want to go home at the end of the day and just play Candy Crush for the next 20 hours.
Yes.
It means I'm tired.
When I put my headphones on and tell the family, you guys, I need Brene Brown was talking about this concept of locking and how you have to, she said, think of some of the locks on rivers where you have to raise the water or lower the water. And somebody was saying, well, can't you do that faster? And the response was, not unless you want the boat to flip. And she said that we need locks and those times. And I never heard it said that way, but I was like, oh yeah, that's me, my headphones and my book going, don't talk to me for 10 minutes, Like,
I love that. But I do think, that personal inventory of, for you and probably your loved ones too, to be like, oh gosh, mom's in bed playing Candy Crush. She needs someone to bring her some sparkling water and just shut the door and leave her there, right? So, because a lot of times I think we're so used to carrying that burden that we don't even know. No. We don't even know, wow, you did a lot of really hard things today. And it's okay for you to then just decompress a little bit. That has to be known to you before you can tell other people about it, right? So a personal inventory there, I think, would be really helpful.
Well, and I think really empathetic managers also know the signs of their employees.
Yeah, for sure.
I've watched employees spin and I'm like, hey.
Yeah.
Hey.
And also, I think maybe the prediction of that too, right? Like, I know this is going to be very hard for this person. So I'm just going to say, I know this isn't your favorite thing, or I know this is going to be very hard for you. That acknowledgement that they are about to do something very, very hard, even if I'm not there to see everything that they're going through, I think is really helpful as well.
I think so.
Yeah.
That's actually probably a phenomenal segue of, you have to do it for yourself. Yeah. And then you have to do it sort of for others. And I think I love all the different stories of people amplifying other voices. I think there's an amplification message around unseen work where you call out that somebody did unseen work for. They really helped with that student that was really tough, and I so appreciate that. Or this sort of, man, I can't believe that person stayed on the phone with me for 20 minutes as I tried to figure out how to get that system to work.
Yeah.
Like, kind of reiterating those things that people do for each other, or the unseen work that is happening that maybe you got a glimpse of that you didn't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's, I've been thinking a lot about this idea of that we criticize in private, but we compliment in public.
Yes.
But if I have some critique or I have something I have to say about you, then you and I will do that together. But if you've done something amazing, I want to talk to everybody about that. And that's a great opportunity. Callie was just telling me that one of another coworker, Tori, fixed something for her that was taking a lot of time. And Tori was like, hey, I can do this. And she did some magic. And now it's like gone from an hour project to like a 2-second project. Yes. Well, that's a great example, because I would never know that happened. I would never know that there was all this work that Callie was needing to do that was hard. Yeah. Or that Tori solved that problem for her, so that now we don't ever have to think about it again. Besides the fact that Callie was like, hey, I want you to know that this thing happened, which is a great all-around experience, right? Yeah. Everybody feels happy about that.
Yeah. Well, and if Tori is spending some of her time doing those things and you're unaware, you may be kind of going, why isn't she doing her job? When in fact, that is a huge part of her job for the benefit of all of us.
She should get some credit for that hard work, which no one would have known about except for the fact that Callie mentioned it. So that's a great example. I do really think, especially if you're a manager, or, Sherry, I think we could also say this about students. I like the idea of saying, can you show me what it takes to do that? Yeah. Because we're wrong a lot of times. But I'm thinking about a student. I mean, I have seen emails to students before where if I said, show me what it takes for you to register for your classes, and they show me this email that they got that's 18 paragraphs long and 7 steps they have to do and 5 people they have to talk to. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, first I have to open and digest. I have to understand this thing. Right there, I would be like, hold on a second. This is really much harder than I thought it was. So I'm probably going to complain less about my students not registering and try to figure out more resources for how I can make that an easier process now that I understand what it is that we're asking of you.
Absolutely.
Right? So I really love that. Just, can you show me what it takes for this so that I can have a clearer picture? And I'm not going to memorize it. I'm not going to be able to do it afterwards, but at least I'm going to have a clear picture of what I'm asking.
I'm going to be a lot more empathetic to you when you say it's hard.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm also going to, with that amplification thing, when other people say it's hard, I'm going to be a voice to say, or when other people say, well, can't they just, I'm going to go, I don't think you understand what it takes.
It's more than you think, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. You have one other, which is increasing visibility of others, which is this idea of amplification, right? How do we call out those things?
Yeah.
I always laugh about the president who I showed all of the student success work that people are doing. And he said, that looks like a lot of work. And I was like, yes, it is a lot of work. And it's really important that you understand it so that you get your people the tools that they need in order to do that successfully. Yeah. Because he just had no idea. Yeah. It's like, identify a student and go make them go to class. And you're like, no. There's a lot of other things there that we have to talk about.
And like that VP said, we need to honor this work, and you can't honor it if you think it's simple.
If you think it's easy. Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah. I also was thinking with this one about the idea of, I worked with a school before where their outcome was, we contact students constantly. I think what the boss heard was, we're running statistics and we're contacting students constantly. Yeah. And because he didn't understand the actual, this work wasn't being done, but because he didn't actually understand what should be happening, what he said to me was, we email students 5 times and they never respond. And I'm looking at the data that's saying this student has gotten an email from us 5 times, right? Yeah. And I'm like, the hard part is because you don't understand the unseen work that should be doing, that should be getting done.
Yeah.
You are counting and measuring the wrong thing.
Yes. Oh.
That is not the job. And if you don't understand that, then you're like, she's doing what she should be doing. They're just not responding. And I'm like, that is not, did they do these 25 things? If they didn't do these, then you're not going to have any results there. Right.
Yeah.
So
we measured, it's the measurement, you get what you measure. And is that really what you wanted? You wanted the number of
anybody? No, it's not helping anybody at all.
No.
Okay, so Sherry, I have some action items for us, but I do want to talk about one more piece, and that is I just think about the unseen work. I want to call out something that is about to happen that I've had a lot of conversation with people, especially in the last week, and that is academic suspension appeals.
Yeah.
Okay, I know it's not the topic of our conversation. However,
yeah.
First of all, accepting an appeal is the easiest part of that job. Taking the rubber stamp and saying yes or no is the easiest part of that job.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand the job, you'd be like, you just sit in a room and you say, what do you guys think? Yes, no. I mean, it's like a bet. We'll just see kind of what happens, right? But I think about, first of all of the time that people spend in a room, weighty considerations about what we're going to do this for the student to set them up for success, to make sure that we're not putting them in a situation that they cannot be successful.
Right.
So both, we want to give you a path, but also we don't want to your detriment either way.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to somebody who was saying in those suspension meetings, the appeals, it is like they're doing things like looking at patterns of attendance. So they don't want to know how many absences. They want to know, was there a week that was very hard for you where you didn't go to any classes, but then otherwise you did a great job? Or was it every Wednesday because you had a job that made it hard for you to get into your class? And so we want to talk about that. And I bring that up just to say that level of detail, if you haven't done that kind of work, would never occur to you that people are spending that kind of time trying to discern what is the right thing to do for the student. And you have to be able to articulate that. Here's how much care we give to these suspensions, because we don't want to say, yeah, let them back in. And then they struggle. And we're like, well, yeah, sorry, that's hard. You know, sometimes you struggle and there's nothing to be done about it. That's easy work. It's easy just to say, yes, good luck.
Right? I love that example, and I love it for because of the thinking and the care and the other things, and because it does communicate so many things, and it's so much better if you describe that to a leader than we spend 20 minutes on each one.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Here's exactly what we're doing and thinking, and that's important for you to know. Okay, so our action items, and again, this is really good timing. First of all, document one or two things, the most challenging things where the idea is you have unseen tasks you maybe never have articulated. Write them down. I think you will be shocked. I think you will really be shocked at so much of that cognitive load that you're carrying for those tasks. And then swap lists with somebody and let's do a little counseling of like, oh my gosh, Sherry, you do so many things to prepare for a podcast. You research and you make sure you have good examples and all of that kind of stuff. And that's so much so that looks really seamless and fluent for other people. But I acknowledge that and I see that, and I'm so glad to see all the things.
Thank you.
We swap and acknowledge with our colleagues. And then how do you brainstorm about, are there things in here which maybe I've held on to because it's a badge of honor because it's hard? Are there things that we can make easier? Right? And
make easier, let go, move to somebody else, especially if I'm carrying the bulk of unseen work in my team. That might indicate an issue.
Yeah, for sure. And then lastly, how do we commit to help our colleagues with that unseen work, either by acknowledging it or helping them think through how they can do that a little bit differently so that it's not quite as hard. That idea of the thought load being your cognitive load, what you have to think about, your emotional burden, what it takes to be able to engage with other people, and then divided by how much energy do you have today in this season at this point in the semester All of those things are really helpful conversations for us to have with our colleagues, to just uncover it and to do a better job of acknowledging some of that unseen work, which can for sure build resentment.
Yeah. Well, and having the conversation is really part of the solution.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Well, thank you for another great conversation. I think this is going to be something that we're going to have to put into practice at Ferris, because I would just hate to think that there are things that people are like, Rachel has no idea how hard that is. And she asks me to do it all the time. And I'm going to be like, make a list for me. I'm not going to memorize it, but at least I'll be able to see like, that's a lot of things that you're doing. So
yeah, help me understand. Let's dig in a little bit without micromanaging.
Just understanding. All right, friends, thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of the 2025. And then we have a new year right around the corner. Thank goodness.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
Good to see you. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.